This is a video all about thermosetting polymers. Hopefully by this point you have looked at thermoforming polymers, but if not, do not panic because that is going to be your starter. So first of all, a nice introduction to this lesson and this topic. I'd really like you to watch the YouTube video below. It's only three minutes long, and it tells you the difference between a thermosetting and thermoforming polymer, as well as some really good metaphors and visual examples. A link to the video can be found in the description. So these are some of the thermoforming polymers that you may have looked at already by now. We have got polyvinyl chloride, or commonly known as PVC. It's flexible, it's tough, easily extruded, so that's why we use it really commonly for pipes in plumbing. Because of its flexibility and its toughness, though, it also means that we can use it for inflatables that you find in a pool, as well as some clothing. It's also quite low in cost and chemically resistant and weather resistant, which again makes it perfect for things that you'd find outside. Polypropylene, or PP. It's tough, good heat and chemical resistant, lightweight, and fatigue resistant. So that means it'll have quite a long lifespan. It's a really versatile polymer, which means we can use it for so many different things, such as the aqua blue rope that you can see on the side there, a DVD case, medical syringes, and children's toys. High impact polystyrene. Tough, hard, rigid, good impact resistant, and lightweight. Commonly, it's more used for children's toys because, little people like to throw things around, they like to test the durability of things. So we need our toys to be made out of something that is really tough and it will absorb that impact without shattering. And it's also food safe, which is why it can also be used for yogurt pots. And yogurt pots are also made through a form called vacuum forming, which we'll investigate later on in life. And hips is something that can be vacuum formed really, really easily because it is a very malleable material once softened. Acrylic. It's a really hard, excellent optical quality, good resistance to weathering, which is why we can use it for things that are outside, but it does scratch quite easily. Because it's optical qualities, it is commonly used in car headlights. It's also used for shop signs, again, because of the optical qualities, it's really bold, it can be quite vibrant, but it can also be easily shaped through either cutting or through molding. And finally, we've got polyethylene. So there are three types of polyethylene. There's low density, high density, and there's also polyethylene terephthalate, which is more food friendly or food safe, which is commonly used for drinking bottles. High density polyethylene is a little bit thicker. It's a little bit harder, a little bit stiffer, more chemical resistant, which is why it's used for wheelie bins, like the image suggests. And then low density polyethylene. Now, this is a really tough polymer. It can absorb impact and not shatter. It's also really flexible, but it has an amazing strength to weight ratio. So what that means is it could be really, 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 really thin like cling film, but still have that strength to it. It can still hold a lot of weight without showing signs of wear, stress, or damage, which is why low density polyethylene is most commonly used for plastic bags. Okay, so hopefully you've watched the starter video on thermoset and thermoforming polymers, and these images are a little bit of a reminder as to what a thermoset polymer actually is. So in case you have forgotten, a thermoset polymer is a type of plastic, it's a type of polymer that if you apply heat to it, it will soften and it will become malleable, so we can form it into particular shapes. However, if we heat it, it becomes malleable, we form it. Once it actually cools down or cures back to its original core temperature, we can no longer form that polymer. We can apply heat to it again, but it will never go back to being malleable. It will just eventually start to burn away. So that's why we've got this lovely image of a fried egg on the screen. An egg, it's in a liquid form. You crack it out of the shell, put it in a frying pan. Once you apply heat to it, it will then start to solidify. Now, if it cools down, it will stay solid. It will stay in that shape. However, if I want to reheat that egg and reshape it, I can add more heat, but I won't ever be able to reshape that egg again. It's always going to be that solid. It's always going to be that form. Eventually, it will just burn away, which is why I really like that kind of metaphor and that analogy of thermosetting polymers linked to a fried egg. So let's jump straight in. Epoxy resin. Epoxy resin is a great thermoset polymer. It's commonly used as an adhesive, and you can get a brand name called Araldite. That is an adhesive that we use to bond different materials together, commonly a polymer with another polymer, but it can also be a polymer to timber or timber to metal, etc. But it's a type of adhesive, so it's a type of glue. And in order to actually use this polymer, resin will be available in two different liquids. So you've got your resin in a little pot, and then you've also got something called hardener. And resin is liquid, but if you mix it with this hardener, it will start to cure. So it'll start to go from a malleable liquid to a stiff, rigid material. And this material has great strength to weight ratio. So think back to that low density polyethylene that we looked at earlier, you know, the plastic bag, means that it could be really, really thin, but it'll still be quite tough. It will still absorb a lot of impact without breaking. But epoxy resin also has really good abrasion properties. So what that means is it won't scratch very easily, and you can handle it quite a lot, and it won't show signs of wear or tear quite easily. So it means it will have a really good lifespan. These are some examples as to what epoxy resin can actually be used for. Lots of them are really decorative here. We've got the resin topped table on the right hand side. We've got a little bit of jewelry where a live flower has been encased or preserved in the resin, but you can also add other pigments to it, so it doesn't have to be just see-through. And in the top left hand corner you can see a piece of timber that's been split in half, and then some resin with some metallic pigments have been added to, again, just be a really beautiful decorative feature. And by coating the timber in this resin, it also enhances the properties of the timber as well, making it last a heck of a lot longer. The next type of resin I want to talk about is polyester resin. So same kind of category, same kind of properties, except polyester resin is really viscous, so it means it's quite thick, like treacle. It's also quite pale, but it still has really good toughness properties, so it can still absorb that impact without shattering, but it also has high abrasion resistance. And again, what that means is you can handle it, you can move it around, you can drop it, you can throw it across the table, and it won't show signs of stress, wear, or damage very easily. It won't show scratches very, very easily. So if you look at the images that surround the screen, it's commonly used to create anatomy models, because if you think about it, young doctors, they need to learn all about the human anatomy, bones, muscles, etc. So these things get handled a lot every day. They get passed around, they get dropped, they get thrown in a cupboard. So they need to be made out of a material that won't wear away quite quickly, that can take that, you know, little bit of rough and tumble. But it's also used for flooring, because we step on flooring, surprisingly enough, so it needs to be able to, you know, accept a little bit of wear. It's also used for car bodies, but also it's used to make boats. So polyester resin is also commonly used to manufacture boats. This is not only because it is a stiff and tough material, but because it can be layered easily with fiberglass, creating a thick, strong, layered material. And that's the image that you can see on the bottom left-hand side. That is the image of a boat being maintained or having a little bit of repair done to it using some glass fiber and also the polyester resin, and it is just added layer by layer to create a nice thick, strong coating. Formaldehyde. So really similar to polyethylene. It's got three different types. We've got melamine formaldehyde, urea formaldehyde, and phenol formaldehyde. Now they have very similar properties, but they're used for different things. Phenol formaldehyde. Phenol formaldehyde was created in 1909 and was then known as Bakelite. So it's a really rigid and hard material. It's also often used for electrical components and household items such as clocks, radios, and telephones, and it is an excellent electrical insulator. So you can see in the little pink box there, what that means is it doesn't allow heat or electricity or even sound to pass through it, which is why it's really good to use for electrical items, just in case you have that little loose cable, and it helps to prevent any electric shocks. Melamine formaldehyde, one of my favorites because of the optical qualities. This is often available in really bright, vivid colors, and that's because it's often used for children's crockery. So children's plates and children's bowls, as well as other picnic ware, because it is quite a heavy material, but it's resistant to heat, which means we can put it in the dishwasher or the microwave. It's also resistant to chemicals, which means we can wash it up really easily, and moisture. So it's got a fairly good lifespan to it. It's also got good resistance, which means it won't scratch too easily, which is why it's used for picnic wear. Because if you think about it, you have picnics outside on a picnic bench, they're being passed around, they might get dropped on the concrete as you're walking around. So we need to make sure that it has that good resistance to scratching. However, it can be prone to chipping. It is also available in a range of colours, like I said, and thicknesses as well. And as well as it being used for picnic wear and children's crockery, because of its toughness and because of its abrasion qualities, it's also used for kitchen surfaces. So most kitchen surfaces will be made out of some kind of manufactured board, like something that's actually quite lightweight, so that it won't collapse anytime soon. But they'll be coated in a melamine formaldehyde to make sure that it resists any wear or tear during its use. And then finally, we've got urea formaldehyde. So urea formaldehyde is a really good electrical insulator, and it's also really good at heat resistance. So it's commonly used for electrical fittings such as plug sockets or light switches. The reason being, again, it can help keep that electricity in, but electrical sockets and appliances tend to get quite warm as the power is running through it, and the last thing you want is a type of polymer that will start to warp as the heat is making it go soft. So we need to use a thermoset polymer to help reduce that. The textile industry also treats some fabrics with urea formaldehyde resins to help promote easy care properties such as anti-wrinkling. It also means that the fibers can also be ironed out as well. The paper industry also uses urea formaldehyde to improve the tear strength. And finally, the timber industry uses urea formaldehyde resin to bind particles in the making of manufactured boards, such as MDF. So if you've ever used a manufactured board, you may have been told that the whole concept of this material is that it is a load of sawdust that has just been mixed with a lot of adhesive and then compressed together to create these lovely sheets. And urea formaldehyde is that type of polymer adhesive that would be used to mix and then blend it all together. Okie dokie. So I appreciate that was really a lot of information to absorb. And at the end of the day, you're not going to remember all of this off the top of your head unless we consistently retrieve it. So what I'd really like you to do, I'd like you to use the link below, as well as the information that I've just gone over. So feel free to rewatch the video whenever you need. But I'd like you to create your own knowledge organizer based on thermoset polymers. So your knowledge organizer, it can be made on paper, just using pens and pencils, highlighters, colors, whatever you fancy. But it could also be made on the computer. You might be aware of some mind mapping software, or you might want to use PowerPoint or Word. The choice is entirely up to you, but this work you produce should be brought into school. Your knowledge organizer can also have pictures on it, but the most important thing, guys, it must have the name of the thermoset polymers that we've just discussed. And it can have images, but it must also have the properties of the polymer and the products it's likely to be used for. So I'm just going to show you a waggle of what that might look like. So this is my mind map of my thermoforming polymers that we talked about at the very beginning of this video. It's a really nice mind map in regard to, it's got some images on it, but most importantly, the information is there and it is correct. So all I've done to create this knowledge organizer is I've labeled or identified the title in the middle of the page. I've then identified the type of thermoset polymer by giving it a title. I've listed its characteristics, and then I've put images to show the type of products that might be made from this polymer. So that might be a way you might want to do it, but it is entirely up to you. The work that you do produce for this, you must physically hand in when you are next at school. You're welcome to upload it onto ePraise if you so wish, but you must have the physical copy with you when your teacher next sees you. have fun with it, really enjoy it. Use that BBC bite size link that I've provided as well for some extra information, and I really hope you enjoy this task.